My packet and all stuff.
Okay, sorry to see you guys have to go to choir as we're preparing for Easter services, and we'll miss you. So anyways, we're going to get started with class here. St. Patrick's Day. Only thing I have green is this time, more or less, so see some green out there. So anyhow, he was quite a guy. I did look him up at one point, and he was quite a guy. So, Christian guy. So anyway, we're going to get started where we left off, more or less, last week. Continue on in your workbooks. It's question 184. And we've been over this briefly, but we're going over it in more detail. And being Easter's coming up in a couple weeks. And so, question is, all four Gospels confirm that Jesus was nailed to the cross on what special day? Was it Good Friday?
No. Wednesday.
No, it wasn't Good Friday, was it? It was a Wednesday. And this particular Wednesday was Preparation Day. It was preparation for the Passover, as John makes clear. And we want to make sure that we understand that and all the confusion is dispelled from those that are attending the class and both online and here. So we're going to look at all these verses. We've been covering this, but we want to be really thorough about it since there is so much confusion. It's so widespread, even in some of the translations, as we'll get into again today. And but we're going to get into first the verses referring to that. And let's look at John 19:14. As a matter of fact, maybe, well, let's just take them, maybe, would we like to read each one a different verse more quickly, or would you like to raise our hands to read a verse?
No.
Okay, we'll take them one at a time then, and that way we can all focus on each one. And, because if you read them all together, it's so repetitious, that's hard to miss it. It's hard to wonder why, people for hundreds of years going back, and I think maybe even thousands of years, have been missing this and basically disagreeing with Jesus when he said he would be 3 days and 3 nights in a tomb, like we talked about last week. So let's read John 19:14.
And it was the preparation of the Passover, and about the sixth hour. And he said unto the Jews, Behold your king.
Behold your king. This is Pilate. Jesus is in the morning. And it says it was preparation day, the morning of preparation day, preparation for the Passover. It wasn't preparation for Saturday Sabbath, as some people actually try to fit in there, but it's very clear that it's preparation for the Passover, which was a traditional preparation day every year for the Jewish people. They did special things on this day that we've already went over. So it says here, it's preparation day. Look at the few verses down from that. Verses 30 and 31.
The Jews therefore, because it was a preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was a high day, besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away.
So it said again there, it was preparation day. And it talked about a high Sabbath. This is not your average Sabbath day. This is not a weekly Sabbath. This is a high Sabbath of Passover that was approaching. That's why they wanted to break the legs of the people hanging next to Jesus and thinking they would have to break his legs as well, because that way they couldn't push up on their legs to catch their breath. You had a tendency to suffocate on the cross as you hung there. So that's why they mentioned that. And it actually fulfilled a prophecy in Psalms that Jesus' legs or no bones would be broken. His legs were not broken. The two people on the two sides of him, their legs were broken because they were still alive. Jesus had already passed by this point, and that's why they didn't break his legs, but instead put a sword in his side to verify that he was already dead. And so no bones were broken. But this was also the end of preparation day, towards the end. And so this is after he was dead. And he'd been on the cross already. And they were preparing to put him on the cross that morning. In the previous verse in here, still preparation day, he's passed. Let's take a look at Mark 15:42. They both mentioned preparation day specifically. So this wasn't the Passover. This was preparation day. And this wasn't Good Friday, which, as we went into in the previous classes, which was the Feast of Unleavened Bread, when they celebrate coming out of Egypt. Let's take a look at Mark 15:42 and 43.
It was preparation day, that is the day before the Sabbath. So an evening approached, Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, went bodily to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body.
Okay, so once again it says in Mark, the previous one was 2 verses in John, 2 areas, and this one is in Mark, saying, verifying again, this is preparation day. Jesus had died, and now, actually there was 2 people, there was Joseph of Arimathea, whatever you pronounce that, and it was also Nicodemus that was with him, who was also a member of the Sanhedrin, who met with Jesus early in his ministry, and privately. And so Nicodemus and Joseph took Jesus down and put him in there in Joseph's tomb. I believe it was Joseph's tomb. He was a rich guy, and it was a rich guy's tomb that had never been used. Let's take a look at Mark 23. Mark 23:52.
Mark 23?
52.
I don't have a Mark 23.
Did I say Mark 23?
Yeah.
That's the problem with being dyslexic. You can't see what you're looking at. We're talking about Luke 23. Let's try Luke 23:52. Mark is actually the previous one, and so yeah. I don't know why I even hardly have notes, except for it does give me some help if I could follow them. All these things are in the answer book of Deep Foundations workbook, by the way, these verses and answers. So, and I update that regularly as I'm going through it. They're all there, all the answers and verses, but I do add to it as we're doing these classes. Okay, Luke 23:52 through 54.
This man went into Pilate and begged the body of Jesus, and he took it down and wrapped it in linen and laid it in a sepulchre that was hewn in stone, wherein never man before was laid. And that day was a preparation, and the Sabbath drew on.
So once again, that day was preparation day, and they're putting him in a tomb now. So the day is passing, and this is the Sabbath drew on. We're going to get into that a little bit later in this class. I hope we have time for. And that is the end of preparation day, and it's at the transition, getting ready to go into the high Sabbath, the Passover. Passover is almost ready to start, and preparation day is just concluded, and they're putting him in a tomb. I put these in a more or less order. That's the reason we have them this way. Well, let's go back to John 19, and we'll see how that fits in this whole scenario. And all of them say preparation day. All 4 Gospels say that. And they say it more than once. John 19, verse 41. We're going to read 41 and 42.
Now in the place where he was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new sepulchre, wherein was never man yet laid. There laid they Jesus. Therefore, because of the Jews' preparation day, for the sepulchre was nigh at hand.
It shows us there's a dispute about where Jesus was put in a sepulchre. This is probably the garden tomb. There's actually 2 different places they refer to, but I think the garden tomb fits best. And Jesus was crucified right outside the city in Golgotha, and so this was nearby, which the garden tomb is. And I've not been there personally, but from what I understand and heard, nevertheless, he was put there at the end of preparation day. And once again, said preparation day. So let's take a look at Matthew 27:62. Now we looked at John, we looked at Mark, we looked at Luke, even though I missed that for a little bit, but it was Luke that we read. And we looked at John again. Now we're going to look at Matthew. He'll be the 4th gospel. Now Matthew takes a little different approach. That he's talking about the guards being put on the tomb. So what you have is at sundown, Jewish time, begins the Passover. It's still that way today, and it was that way then. So they're just about sundown, and the stone is rolled in front of the tomb to seal the tomb, and Jesus is inside the tomb. We're at the end of preparation day as it's transitioning to the Sabbath, or I should say Passover, the high Sabbath. So here's the transition from Wednesday, their time, to Thursday, their time, roughly 6 o'clock Wednesday evening, our time. And now it's transitioned, and they're technically at the Sabbath, the high Passover of the high Sabbath of Passover. And here come the Pharisees to Pilate saying, because they're concerned about the tomb, we need guards there. And so they actually realized, where did the body go? Okay, let's get some guards there. Let's make sure that there's no things that go on, because he said about raising, even they knew he was going to rise on the third day. And so bottom line is that's what this is referring to. It's actually a day after, which is not like 24 hours later. It's like just maybe an hour later, when you're still in a transitional time, but it is well established. Yesterday was preparation day. Now it's 6:30. Maybe so they actually have a shadow that passes over a certain place to tell them exactly when the day transitions. But nevertheless, this is actually what that's referring to. Let's look at Matthew 27:62 through 66.
Now the next day that following the day of the preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees came together unto Pilate, saying, Sir, we remembered that the deceiver said, while he was yet alive, after 3 days I will rise again. Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure unto the third day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away, and say unto the people, He is risen from the dead. So the last era shall be worse than the first. Pilate said unto them, Ye have a watch, go your way, make it as sure as ye can. So they went and made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone and setting a watch.
Okay, so here we are. It says it's the day after preparation day. He's already in the tomb. They realized it. Now they want to put guards at the tomb. There would be Roman guards. It's a guard regiment that's put at the tomb. And so this is just shortly after he's put in there. And the guards arrive, and they check, make sure everything is good. He's in there. They're not sealing an empty tomb. And they seal it with a Roman seal. It's a clay seal with a signet on it. And it seals the seam of the rock. And if anybody breaks that, it would be understood they broke Roman law, subject to death in this case. So nobody's going to do that unless they really are in charge, like Jesus, or have boldness like the disciples did not. See, they are run away. They're all hiding. They're hiding in the upper room during this time frame when he rises from the dead, worrying about what the Pharisees and different people are going to do to him next. They already crucified their leader. Are they going to go after the followers now? They don't know. So they're not going to do that without a complete change of mind. And that didn't happen. Actually, there's people went to the tomb when it was able not to break him out, but to realize he's already gone. And so anyhow, in the book Deep Foundations, it gets into all those things in detail. I'm talking about Resurrection Day. So this is on what day that he was put on the tomb? Put in the tomb? Preparation Day. And there's every single gospel says that very word, and most translations say that very word, Preparation Day. And we went into that. That was Wednesday that year. So let's go into the next question. Jesus was nailed to the cross on what day of the week and what time of day? We've kind of already mentioned that.
It was Wednesday.
It was Wednesday. That's right. Wednesday was Preparation Day.
Mm-hmm.
And he was put on the cross at what time of the day? 9 o'clock.
Yeah, 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock in the morning is when he was nailed to the cross. And we see that in John 19:14. Let's go back there and just review that a little bit.
John 19:14.
Yeah.
And what question are we on?
Yes.
What question are we on?
We're on question 185.
And it was the preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour, and he said unto the Jews, Behold your king.
Okay, now this is before he's nailed to the cross. This is the trial, about the 6th hour. Now that's talking, as we talked about. Now that's using our time. that would be considered 6 o'clock in the morning. Now, one key to understand the progression of the time regarding when Jesus was crucified is John uses our time. John's speaking here. He's saying it's the 6th hour. So he's the only one that uses our time, which is the same time we have. At that time, it would be 6 o'clock, just like it would be 6 o'clock in the morning, and on Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning. And so that's pretty easy to understand. But then let's look at Mark 15. Well, take a look first before you do that. Everybody's at John 19:14. Let's read John 19:14 in the NIV and as well as the NLT. So you got the NIV there handy?
I do.
You got
It was the day of preparation of Passover week, about the 6th hour. Here is your king, Pilate said to the Jews.
Okay, is that the same as what yours is, right?
It was the day of preparation of Passover week, about the 6th hour. Yeah.
Okay.
Here's your king.
And what about yours, Jim?
It was now about noon on the day of preparation for the Passover, and Pilate said to the people, "Look, here is your king."
So theirs is about noon. So that's a problem, because we know that this is the time when they're putting together the trial to put him on the cross. This is early in the morning, it's very clarified. So that needs to be crossed out. It was misdone. They didn't actually convert the clock. They did it poorly to say that it was noon, because actually John actually uses our Gentile clock. Now, in early versions of the NIV, which is what I read, it actually also said that. You guys must have a revised version, possibly. I'll just maybe double check that, but I actually like the Blue Letter Bible on the internet, and I recommend that to everybody. It's easy to get on. You just get on the Blue Letter Bible. Just you don't have to download it. You just just type it in, Blue Letter Bible, and I have it on where I just go on one click. I have a quick button to get to it on my computer, my laptop here. And on that Bible, you can pick any version you want, except for the newest version, which I really like. The MEV is not there. I actually bought that to read that on a regular reading for my phone. And so the MEV is not there, but they have a lot of different translations. So if you go there to this verse, you click V for verses, translations, it'll have a dozen translations of that same verse. And you can look at the NIV, you can look at the NLT, and you can look at the New American Standard and the Amplified and King James and New King James and a number of verses. So you can actually see there all the different approaches to that particular verse. You can see the variations. You can see that this one right here is a mistranslation in those verses. Now those verses do a good job when they talk about the old nature. I like that, when they spell it right out, the old nature instead of the old man and different things, or the flesh. And so they have their strong point when it comes to that. But here, they have a very weak point, and where they actually add to the confusion. Let's take a look at Mark 15:25. Mark 15:25. Now we see that the trial was 6 o'clock in the morning. That's what that verse is saying. But now we're looking at Mark, and he's using what clock?
The
Jewish clock. Yeah, that's why it looks like a contradiction here in the King James, which actually translates it as it was written out of the Greek. They don't try to change or reform the words and understanding to fit our clock, because that's where the confusion comes in, because people didn't understand some of these things, and they wrote the wrong things, just like we just seen, where this was not noon, this was 6 o'clock in the morning when the trial was. And now Mark 15:25. Let's go ahead and read that.
And it was the 3rd hour, and they crucified him.
So they crucified him on the 3rd hour. That means 3rd hour Jewish time. Their 1st hour starts at 6 o'clock in the morning, sunrise. Just like the 1st hour of the day starts at 6 o'clock at night, because this is during the spring equinox, when there's equal 12 hours day and night. So shortly after that. So nevertheless, so this is the 6th hour, would be the 1st hour, when he was at trial there, 6 o'clock in the morning. And this is the 9th hour, it said, right? So this is 3 hours later, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 o'clock our time, 6th hour their time. Go ahead and read that, Jim, in your translation.
It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him.
So that's accurate, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how did they have the crucifixion before the trial? Because in the previous verse that we read over that translation said it was noon.
Yeah.
Does that add some confusion?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the reason why there's so much confusion out there. Some Bibles mistranslate these things, and then they promote them through history. They say, how could they got it wrong for these hundreds and thousands of years? Saying he died on Friday, Good Friday, saying that these things, that they're so confusing, saying what they come down to is, well, it's written by man and it has contradictions. They have their opinions in the Bible. Well, that's because they have their mistranslations of the Bible. The accurate Bible, the original Bible in Greek, is completely accurate. There is a thread of accuracy throughout history that God has preserved. It's His Word. It's indestructible, it says. It's eternal. It'll be in heaven. And nobody can destroy it, not even the devil. He's tried. So the devil, what he does is surrounds it with mistranslations, with confusion. And he tries to get people to miss it, ignore it. But the truth is out there, and it's very valuable. It's like a diamond surrounded by glass and plastic. At Judgment Day, the glass and plastic melt away. They're worthless. But the diamond is indestructible. And that's the truth. And that's what we're looking for in this class, is the truth. And so that's why we point these things out. Any questions?
What Bible is that?
That's the
NLT.
NLT. And it does do a nice, colorful job of translating some things. So it does have its strong points that we liked when it talked about the old nature and stuff. And it is accurate there. And it is accurate in this verse right here. But the trouble is, half-truths add more confusion to the situation. When it's not consistently right, or consistent, that's the whole point of this class, being consistent in the Word of God. If we're consistent, we'll have a better foundation. If we're inconsistent, as most theologies are, and they have, just like the theology on Crucifixion Day, saying it's Good Friday, that's inconsistent. To start with Jesus' own words. Then you'll find all kinds of problems. It's not a strong foundation. It's not a strong building. And God is building a strong building of truth on the foundation of the Word of God, Jesus Christ, that He's the Word. Any questions on, did we read Mark 15:25 in the regular translation? We did, right?
Yes.
Okay. So any questions on
Question.
that? Let's take a look at the NLT again and Mark 15. Let's look at Mark 15:42.
And now when the even was come, because it was the preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath.
But I mean in Jim's translation now, they said the preparation day. We talked about that. It's Wednesday. That's not the Passover. That's not Friday, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So Jim, what's yours say in Mark 15:42 NLT, New Living Bible?
Let me find it, I'm almost there.
Mark 15:42.
My glasses, but I got it right here.
Okay.
This all happened on Friday, the day of preparation, the day before the Sabbath, as evening approached.
There you go.
So, yeah.
See, that's a complete blatant
Right.
falsehood. This didn't all happen on Friday. So where do people get that it happened on Friday? Well, it's written right there. Now, that's a newer translation. It wasn't written in the King James as we read earlier.
Right.
So those are things that actually should be scratched out. And you're not scratching out the Bible. What you're scratching out is men's notes that they added to the Bible. Their basic definitions of things that they twisted because they're not true. It's like some political people would take a truth and then they twist it to meet what they understand or what they want to convey. Well, that's not accurate. It wasn't Friday. And we went over that over and over in all these verses. It is undisputable. It could not be Friday. It was not Friday. The Bible is very clear over and over that it was Wednesday, preparation day, not Friday.
But then they don't know.
Who don't know?
Some people.
Most people don't know this.
When does,
And the reason why is because of those very things. Mistranslations, preaching from the pulpits, the people that they trust should know better are taught these things in college. They are taught these things in college. And they try to promote Friday was Crucifixion Day. That's going against Jesus' own words in all four Gospels as well as the Old Testament we got into last week. Go ahead.
You know, like this one here is
NIV.
NIV. Okay, so it says in the actual verse, it says it was preparation day,
Mm-hmm.
that is the day before the Sabbath, so as evening approached. But if I look down at my notes, it says in my notes, preparation day,
Yeah.
Friday.
There you
Since
go.
it was now late in the afternoon, there was an urgency to get Jesus down.
So there again, and notes are men's additions, and that's a translator's notes
Yeah.
though. So that's not really commentary. That's saying that what this is that they're saying is Friday, and we know it's blatantly wrong.
When does the Jewish 24-hour day start?
Starts at sundown,
Right,
right?
sunset.
Sunset.
So and what does it say?
It was Friday, they said, and that was at the end of the day,
Actually,
Friday.
it's Thursday. It's Thursday, right?
No, it's not. It's Wednesday. Go ahead and read that verse once again. Just read that verse that we're talking about. I believe, what verse was that? Mark 15:42?
Yes.
Read that.
In
Go
my
ahead.
Bible?
Yeah, go ahead, read it.
Well, it says
NIV.
it was preparation day. That
So-
is the day before the Sabbath. So as evening approached.
As the evening's approaching, but evening's not here yet. See, it's still preparation day, and the evening's approaching. Let's read the next verse. What time frame is this?
But whenever I said I look up.
Yeah, they're claiming it's Friday. We know that's incorrect.
Yeah.
But what's the next verse? What are they doing right here?
Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council, who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body.
There you go. Jesus' body, because Jesus is dead right now.
Right.
So this is 3 o'clock. We know that he died at 3 o'clock. We just read that.
Because evening is approaching. It's in
Evening's approaching. That's approaching 6 o'clock.
Right.
So this is between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock, and they're going to Pilate. So they didn't go to Pilate until they knew he was dead, which was 3 o'clock. So they're around 4 o'clock, and they got to get permission, and then they got to take him down. They got to get to the tomb, and it's approaching 6 o'clock. But it's not Thursday yet.
No, it's
This is Wednesday,
Right.
preparation day, not Friday.
because evening's approaching. It's
Evening
still
is approaching, and as we
still
talk,
preparation, still
evening
Wednesday.
covers two things: the end of the day and the beginning of the day. It is a transition of the day. So the evening of the day could be the end of the day. That's the evening sacrifice that started at 3 o'clock. We went into that in previous classes. That's the evening sacrifice. So that's the evening of preparation day. But also, as in Genesis, this is evening and then morning, which begins the day. Day 1, evening, morning. Day 2, evening, morning. All the days, evening, morning. So that's the period of time. That's why the Bible actually uses evening as plural in one particular place. Evenings. Because there's two evenings. There's the end of the day evening and the beginning of the day evening. I believe that's in Isaiah. It's referred to as evenings. That also adds a little confusion, because we always think that evening is the end of the day. But biblically speaking, it is also and can be the beginning of the day and is a transition. Now, this was the end of the day, in the preparation day. And the Sabbath of Passover was approaching. This was Wednesday, preparation day. Not Friday, as these other translations claim. And as we've already proven over and over, this is preparation day. And the Bible, and John says, is preparation for the Passover. Makes that very clear. And we also went in previous classes that Friday was technically the Feast of Unleavened Bread when they celebrated coming out of Egypt, because Thursday was Passover when they're delivered, but they didn't go leave Egypt until the next day, 24 hours later. Passover was at midnight, but nevertheless, that morning of Friday would be our Good Friday, which is their Feast of Unleavened Bread. And the reason why they have that feast is because they ate unleavened bread after they left Egypt. And they left Egypt on that day. And the Bible is very clear that the 14th and 15th of Nisan, these 2 days are very special in the Jewish history and religion. They're high days. Passover technically lasted a week, but there's special days throughout that week. That Passover Thursday was very special. That was the actual Passover. And this was also special. And so anyhow, that's how it all comes together. But that's where a lot of the confusion is. And during the next Great Awakening, these confusion things are going to be wiped away. Because Jesus made that very clear. We're going to be unified in truth. So there's a whole lot of not truth out there, even in translations that we just seen. Those things are not true. And we just seen that. They disagree with Jesus' own words about being 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb. They disagree with their very own versions, saying they had a trial at 6 in the morning, it said, and he put on the cross at 9, but yet at noon, they were having a trial in those translations. I just remembered that it was actually noon was a trial, and he's put on the cross at 9. That just doesn't add up. That adds to confusion. If you read those, that's the reason why people actually can't really study those things. You can read through them and understand some of these things, but if you really want to study something, you really need to stay with something that's more accurate. Like the King James is the most accurate Bible out there, period. That is it. Next to that would be the NIV, the New English Version, or the New King James. They're close, but the King James on a word study is more accurate most of the time. Now there's certain things you can tweak, and we'll get into that a little bit, but they're not inaccurate. They just could be more identified.
When you're done, Al.
Go ahead and say something.
Even though like Good Friday is still practiced as we speak, but when I grew up and went to Catholic school, and my mother was more devout Catholic, every week we didn't eat meat on Fridays, even in school.
Mm-hmm.
We got tuna fish or whatever. We never ate meat on Friday, any Friday, which is, I believe, is tied to the memory of Good Friday.
That sounds like it. I'm not familiar. I wasn't raised Catholic. I didn't even know any Catholics.
It was a tradition. My grandmother, 100 years ago, and I grew up with my grandparents, and I know for a fact that my grandmother, 100 years ago, when she was born, that her mother and her grandmother did Good Friday. It was something that they celebrated for generations, and it was just an ongoing thing.
Now, an interesting thing. Now, Good Friday is not, as if say that the day that Jesus died on the cross. We've already went into that, and we're going to continue to see that. The Bible is super clear about that. There's no disputing it if you believe the Bible. So Good Friday was the day that they left Egypt and they ate unleavened bread, which is interesting that they say don't eat meat. So that's the one thing you could do to celebrate on Good Friday, because it's actually going along with the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's what they did. They didn't have any lamb. It was to be gone. They ate it before midnight, and whatever was left of the lamb was consumed by fire before morning, before daybreak. And they left, and they were just packing it up and leaving. And all they ate was unleavened bread. That's the reason why the Feast of Unleavened Bread is called what it is, how it's symbolized by no meat. So it's interesting they say no fish, no meat, no whatever, because that actually would be in abiding with Good Friday, but they have no clue as why they're doing that. It's sort of like, there's an old story, I'll just give it to you, of a lady that, for generations, they cut off the end of the pot roast. And they put it in the pot. And one day the husband says, why do you do that? You're wasting all that meat. And she says, well, my mom did that. And I'll ask her. Yeah. She says, well, her mom did that. I'll ask her. Well, her mom was still alive, like 91 years old, like your mother-in-law. And she says, oh, we did that because we had such a small pot. So we had to cut it off to fit it in the pot. Well, that's the same with a lot of these traditions. They don't have a clue why they're doing it. Maybe why they started it, they might have had something, but it was misunderstood in this case. It was never Friday, and never should have been Friday. But that tradition is not always a good thing to know or follow unless you actually know the history of it. Where did that originate? And why do they do that? That's one of the things I always like to ask. Why do we do that? Where did that originate? Even slang language. When I started realizing when I was younger, some of the things I say, where did that originate? There's things I said that I didn't even realize what I was saying. And I was reflecting on Jewish people and different things. And so I didn't even realize that until I offended a Jewish person, and then I realized why. And now I realize, oh, I see, okay, I won't do that no more. So anyway, these histories, we got to look at are they connected to the truth? Are they building on the foundation of Jesus Christ? Because every other foundation will crumble, will not last. When it comes to the fires of judgment, only the truth lasts. And only things done in the truth lasts. And deceptions will be all understood as deceptions melt away. Any other further questions? We're running short on
I had a
time.
daughter.
Uh-huh.
I could not tell her I did. But whenever I say that's because mommy did it or because my mother did it, she says, well, I have to find out the truth.
There you go. And that's the way it should be. And we should know why we're doing the things we're doing. That's what real faith is. That's how you build. Faith is built on truth, not superstition and not assumptions. Real faith has a strong foundation of truth. That's what gives you the boldness that you can stand up against conflict. I don't care who it is. I don't care how many theologies they have attached to their name and theologian of how many years. When it comes to the truth of the Bible, I'll talk to them about what the Bible says in spite of what they've been taught. Because most of them have been taught Friday was crucifixion day. And there's a lot of other things they've been taught that are incorrect that we've gone into in other classes. That's the reason why I wrote this book full of things. You can see how thick it is. Correcting all these mistakes people make and are taught are common today. And there's lots of them. From prophecies to this time of Easter, from understanding how salvation works, from predestination and man's free will, how they fit together. There's just so many things that people are confused about. Because you got to start with the foundation of Jesus Christ, the Word of God. Then you got to be consistent with that. And if you are, then you can start getting bigger light. Things start adding up. God's showing me things all the time because He showed me so much in the past. There's so much that I see that when He shows me something fresh, it's just, oh yeah, that fits in the big picture. Or I see something that don't fit. That's not right. Something's wrong with that. But you got to start with the right foundation. If you start thinking that Good Friday was crucifixion day, then you have the wrong foundation, and everything you see that contradicts that, you can say something's wrong with that. Because there is a misunderstanding that conflicts with your old nature and your soul and your thinking, saying, how could I be? I've had people be thoroughly offended. My father-in-law was thoroughly offended when I mentioned Friday wasn't crucifixion day. It was preparation day. Some people will be offended by the truth. The Bible says that, matter of fact. And they'd rather hold the fairy tales or whatever. Or they're offended because they believe this all their life, or they taught this all their life. I can understand the offense. That's no reason to stay there.
Yeah.
That's ignorance. When you're not ignorant no more, you get more light. As you get more light, then these other things start getting illuminated. Because see, that's what the darkness does. Confusion and darkness, that's what the devil does. He brings darkness. And what do you see in darkness? Not much. So you get a little light. And as your light grows, you see more and more. And you see how things add up. You see the whole picture of life, what this life's all about, what eternal life's all about, what heaven's going to be like, and all the factors of heaven. It's going to be awesome when we get to heaven. This is just a preparation time. But it's going to be awesome. It's all in the book. You should definitely read it. And especially right now, read chapter on crucifixion time and resurrection day, because it is approaching Easter. It sets everything in perspective. And so definitely everybody should have a book here. You should read those chapters this time of the year. And it explains everything in much more detail than we get into this class with. So we'll get back to this question here, next question, and we'll probably close with this question because we're out of time. But to reinforce it, how long did Jesus suffer on the cross?
6 hours.
It was 6 hours, yeah. It was from Mark, says that from Mark 15:25 to Luke 23:44. And I believe we've already went into those verses, so we're not going to reread those. But it's very clear, the Bible gives us the time frame. As it gives us the time frame for generations in Genesis. So we know that, for instance, Israel wasn't in Egypt 430 years. And so why is that important? Because it's part of an understanding of prophetic generation and understanding prophecy, which until you understand some of these things, you won't see deeper things, such as which part of God's plan and calendar are we in yet? Well, we're not at the end times. It is the end times ever since Jesus was here. But we're not in the last generation. And we know that generation will last a long time. And we know Jesus coming back is not the next thing on God's calendar. If you read the book, and I've heard previous classes, we know the next thing on God's calendar, and it is on God's calendar, is this great awakening I referred to, when people are unified in truth. That's never happened in history. God's body has never been unified in truth, and it's not unified in truth today. We have divisions and religious sects, or whatever you want, sects. By the way, that's S-E-C, I believe it is. But anyways, terrible speller. But nevertheless, they have divisions right now. And they are misquoting Jesus and the four Gospels right now, saying that Good Friday was the day he died. Now, a few churches are coming around. I believe our church has come around, and there's a few other churches I know have come around. It's okay to say on Friday, this is the day we celebrate or honor Jesus' crucifixion. It's not okay to say this is the day Jesus was crucified. Those two statements are similar. They sound similar. People would accept it the same way. The one is a lie from the devil. and one is a fact of history. There's a big difference between following the devil's lies and acknowledging the facts of history. We don't want to promote the devil's lies any further. We don't want to continue the darkness and confusion as we talked about, because that's the foundation, the starting point where we can understand much deeper things, and that great awakening will be part of that, opening our eyes to what the Bible actually says. And that's what we've been getting into, is what the Bible actually says. And we're going to close real quickly. I think we're going to get into a little bit. Now, one thing that confuses people also, let's read John 19, or John 2:19.
Jesus answered and said unto them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up.
So in 3 days, he said he would rise it up. Let's read Mark 8:31. And let's read that in the King James, because we'll make sure we're accurate. Mark 8:31.
And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected of the elders and of the chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again.
He said after 3 days there, didn't he?
Yeah.
So this is another thing, and I've actually been told by somebody that was actually replacing me in a prison ministry, that the Bible is not, you take it, and interpret it any way you want to, you just kind of leave parts out, because there's so many contradictions. And he brought this very thing up, that Jesus said he was crucified after 3 days and in 3 days. And I had a chance to explain to him a little bit that that's using two different clocks, but how is that accurate? And I just gave the answer away. Jesus said he would rise from the dead in 3 days and after 3 days. How could both these statements be true? Answer is different clocks, different times.
Right.
So after 3 days would be after sundown, Saturday night. That begins the Jewish first day of the week, because the seventh day is Saturday. That's their weekly Sabbath. So after the seventh day and sundown ends that seventh day, Jewish time. It's still the same today around Passover and stuff. They'll see that. And then, so that becomes the first day of the week. 7 o'clock, our Saturday night, is their Sunday morning. Or you might say Sunday, first day of the week. It's technically not morning, but it's the beginning of their day, Sunday. Now, our day ends at what time? Midnight. And midnight, except for we're on daylight savings time now. And I'm not sure. I think it changed that a little bit, but it's supposed to be the middle of the night. That's how it gets its word. Midnight, middle of the night. So at this time of the year, there's 6 hours on both sides of the clock. It's 12 hours a day, 12 hours a night, because of the spring equinox we mentioned. So 6 hours later, you have the changing of the day. So you can have between these two time frames, after 3 days, after sundown, Jewish time. Still, that would be after 3 days. That would be the seventh day. The first day of the week, Sunday, after the seventh day had concluded, and then before midnight, because it's still in that time frame, in 3 days. So that's how both these contrary statements, and the Bible is full of contrary statements to bring this kind of narrowing the facts. He didn't rise before daybreak on our Sunday morning. He rose, as we'll get into next week, right at the end of the Jewish seventh day. After that had concluded, in the very beginning of the Jewish first day of the week, which would be roughly 6 o'clock, 6:10, 15, 6:30, by 7 o'clock, Jesus had already risen from the dead. That'd be our Saturday nights between 6 and 7. And we're going to prove that in the Bible. If you believe the Bible, you'll see that. But the bottom line is that, and we're going to get into that next week because we don't have time this week, we got close. But the bottom line is that Jesus focused on this time frame. And those statements are all accurate. And the time frame, according to everything that happened, shows that he was risen from the dead at the very first hours of the Jewish day, during both of these, after 3 days and in 3 days. We're going to get into that starting next week. And so we're going to have to close today. Any questions on that yet? Okay, so there's an answer to these things. And if you just assume the Bible's incorrect, sometimes the translations are. That's why you want to read different translations. And focus on the most accurate ones as being the standard. Because if there's one of them that conflicts, go with the King James. Now, we're talking about when the whale, King James did mistranslate that, because at the time they thought whales were fish. So there are some things where these other translations do come in and help give clarity, but bottom line is that each one has its strong and weak points. So, but the strongest points for word studies is in the King James. We're going to close now with prayer. Any questions? Okay. We got a slow connection button again. We were having slow connections, and I can't really stop this video. I don't know.